Ivy Valentine subscribes to Mark Yoon, so should you. Enjoy your treat!
What's up, everybody, and welcome to my review of
Streetfighter.
Alright, so there's a lot that I have to cover and talk about for this review, and it may be more nuanced than a lot of you actually might be expecting from this review, because I've seen rave reviews about this game and the modes and stuff, and I do have my criticisms while I enjoy it. So hopefully if you agree with me, then give a thumbs up, but I want to try and see everything that I can gather about this game. I've recorded this gameplay on a PS5 using an Elgato HD60S, so let's just look at some of the gameplay footage while we're talking about the different areas that I want to cover in this game. Alright, so instead of going with the traditional, the bad stuff and then the good stuff, I want to kind of intertwine them together, just talk about certain aspects of the game and what the plus and minuses that I believe are about those same games. So what we're going to do first is we're going to cover the modes of the game. So obviously the main intensive version of this game is all going to be compacted within World Tour mode, which is the World Tour mode is where you create your original character, you go around on a series of events trying to find masters to learn more moves and play pretty much the overarching story. Now, I've seen rave reviews about this, and this was probably the mode I was most excited for. In fact, if we visit the most recent poll that I conducted on my last video, where I said, are you excited for the single player modes in Street Fighter 6, the overwhelming majority said yes with 69%, 15% followed with kinda, 12% was not really, and finally in last place we have only online for me. So it's reason that they had the crazy kind of build up for this is because like Street Fighter's never really done something like this before. We haven't really had an open world type character kind of traversal thing really since like the since the Mortal Kombat PS2 era. There has been other examples of things, mostly in arena fighter games like anime games like Naruto and things of that nature, and we did get some kind of beat 'em up modes when it comes to like Tekken Force mode from Tekken 3 and through Tekken 6. So there are examples of this kind of single player action, especially like Chronicles of the Sword and Libra of Souls and Soul Calibur 3 and 6 respectively, but never has it been done on this scale. That's what I thought, at least at first, but it may be a little bit more hollow than people are expecting it to be. So first and foremost, I want to say that the character creation engine is pretty good. However, there are problems with it. For example, when you first create your character, you may not be able to get them exactly the way that you want, including skin tones and variations and things of that nature. I found out from playing the game that actually you unlock that throughout World Tour mode. So, for example, when I had Blanka become my master, I unlocked the ability to use green for my created characters, which you can go back and change. The shops update regularly, semi-regularly, and you use the in-game currency to actually purchase things from the shop, or you fight avatar battles with NPC players that were within the world of World Tour and complete conditions, and sometimes you actually get equipment pieces for your character. You can look really ridiculous at first because these are all stat based, but we have the traditional RPG mechanic where you can appear a certain way but keep the stats of another thing. We also have upgrades for the equipment, so there's no really problems there. I'm happy with that system. I like it, even though I wish there was a better way to get more items more frequently. As of recording this, I have about 20 hours into the game. I am currently on chapter 9 of the story, so I'm not even like all the way there. I haven't really completed it, but I've played enough to be able to give my assessment and guess of what I think is going to be future in there. Segmenting that from what's actually going on in World Tour mode, it's not really a story so much as like a thin plot that is trying to be built upon. We have like you joining as a fledgling fighter and Luke as your trainer with his enormous forearms that are bigger than his biceps for some reason. I know it's stylized, but that's a little ridiculous, Capcom. You're making Cammy's thighs like put on a whole new level here. And though I like the overall look of the game, like the graphics in this mode are not as keen as they should be on next-gen consoles by now, and it's probably held back by the fact that this did release on prior consoles as well, such as the PS4 and the Xbox One. So I think that like therein lies a little bit of a problem with that, but it's mainly you could tell they've dumped a lot of money in this mode. It's a pretty big open world. Now I have seen people say that like, well, no, there's other story modes that you mentioned before. You can't travel to other worlds or other countries, and you can't really do that here. For an example, if you go to like any of the stages that you're supposed to fly to, it's like a little tiny little arena, which sometimes you can even traverse the entire thing in like 10 steps. There's usually like 1 or 2 NPCs that you can battle in there. There's usually a merchant, and then most of the time, if you've unlocked the master in that area, there's a master that is there. But that's it. There's like literally nothing else to be had of those traversals. So it's pretty much like almost like a room where you basically go into. And I do like it, but I do think that they could have like expanded upon that a little bit more and give us like more like ways to traverse. There's no buildings to go into or anything like that, for example. And it's usually like you get like 1 custom item or emote on that place if you complete the conditions about fighting the right NPC. And you are traveling back and forth there a bunch of times because as you level up, whatever moves and style that you have assigned to your created character, you level up those moves as you use them, whether it be against NPCs or against stronger opponents, which you actually go into a traditional versus match for. As you can see in my gameplay footage, while the rest of the bad guys that you encounter are like a beat-em-up style that come from both sides of the screen, usually 2 enemies at once. When one gets down, another one comes back in. Sometimes I've seen them go up to like 8 or 9 enemies at a time, especially on this subway mission train, which is really fun. But there's also like a lot of like different variations within like just the running around the world, because you can actually use those moves that you learned from your masters in the overworld, such as spinning bird kick to like try and cover gaps or something, or traverse somewhere else, or use shoryuken to like get up higher than you need to go. So there's a lot of like gameplay value in there that I haven't necessarily seen in other games of the similar kind of venture. Now, when you level up your master, they get new dialogue options, and they also get, they'll give you like their ultimate attack, or they'll like, you know, just like pretty much talk to you. There is some backstory in there, such as Ken talking about his one student that he had, and Ryu about how he travels too much to want to train, but like when he did have a student, he liked watching her grow. Things that are like similar to that. So you get little instances of lore here and there, but for the most part, it's pretty much just like, hey, you're a good fighter, and I'm like in your progress. It's like not really much there. When you're creating your character, by the way, you can choose between a ton of voice options, but these are for only in-battle stuff, because we have the classic, like, there's no recorded voice lines for your character within the World Tour mode itself, so you're pretty much like the silent person standing there, as always, and this mode actually reminds me a lot of, like, a Yakuza game. It plays almost exactly like a Yakuza game. The NPCs look and feel and act like a Yakuza game. So if you've played any of the Yakuza games, or that Fist of the North Star knockoff of Yakuza, then you pretty much know what this mode is going to play like before you buy the game. So you'll have a pretty good idea going in about what you're expecting or looking for. Though there is actually a lot more variation in Yakuza games, because it's dedicated for that style of game in particular. Now, before I go off of like this mode onto the next mode, I do want to mention that there is a lot of fun to be had in this mode, especially when you're like unlocking new things, but there's also some frustrations that seem not to really be there. For example, when you're traversing on the map in the city, and you have one point that's in like another fast travel location, which you unlock as going to new bus stops, and you have to use that within like the cell phone to fast travel. You don't do it from the stops themselves. It took me a little bit to figure that out. But when you're actually walking towards your goal, every like street is blocked off by police. And in the draw distance, you can clearly see what's going on the other side, because it's the same map. But there's absolutely no way to get past these police officers. And you literally, like, fast travel to that same spot, and you can go to the other end where the police officers still are. Which makes me realize that these are pretty much quarter-zoned and sectioned off little sections that are similar to the other places you travel to. And it's not completely open world or even a traditional linear path. It's more of a hybrid. So I would think more of like something like Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, for example. But beyond that, if you travel at night, you'll get attacked more, and there's a lot of bad guys that are looking for you. But if you're traveling during the day, that's when a lot of the missions are completed. Sometimes you have to go to your hideout and switch from day to night in order to initiate a certain mission, and some missions require you to wear certain clothing or whatever to do like a certain kind of mission. The missions are pretty overall fun. Some of them are very repetitive. I'm having an overall fun experience when it comes to leveling up my character and going with that, but overall, I think they could have done better with this mode, and while I enjoy it, I can't say it's like the best thing I've ever played, and it's not like the great grandiose adventure that like we've been led to believe. So if I'm gonna rate this mode in particular, I'd probably give it like a 7 out of 10. It definitely has room for improvement, but it's definitely better than the average story, and certainly in the case for Street Fighter. Now, before moving on to the next area, which is the Battle Hub, I do want to say that this is a $60 price point, so it hasn't reached that new market of next-gen console exclusive prices yet. We're not hitting that $69.99 or that $70 price point, so a lot of people were happy with that. But then when it comes to the next other modes, it makes me wonder, was this price point even really worth it? Now, I really like this game. I'm having a ton of fun. Like I said, I got over 20 hours into it just in one weekend, so I've been playing the crap out of it. But the modes themselves, I will say, I wish were not selectable separate 3-part modes. I wish they were actually in one menu together so you can like list and see everything that's in the game, because that might make it look a lot beefier than it is. Because the way it is now, every one of the modes by themselves seems kind of barren. And I know they did this for storage space reasons. You can actually choose to download the other apps on the game, even though they still show up in the main menu. But if you don't download them, then like you don't have access to them. But a lot of people are not going to play the single player part that are core Street Fighter fans, and those are people that I'm most worried about. Because with a roster of only 18 characters, if you're going into the normal Street Fighter mode, all there is, as you can see on the screen, is pretty much like online training, which is a very, very good training mode, I will say. You could do a lot of things like other normal stuff, and you can check all the different... It's like a really good training mode. You'll have to check it out for yourself. But arcade, which is the bare bones regular arcade, you do 5 matches. Like, it's hard to even lose unless you have the difficulty a lot. Gives no really build up for the main bad guy this game. Even I was surprised about Ken, because Ken was supposed to have this elaborate backstory about like why he looks the way he does, but it turns out that the events that like that happened in the past, and like he's just like kind of reminiscing on them, and he's kind of just like hiding out as like, I'm not going to spoil too much, but let's just say that like it wasn't a very sufficient arcade ending or build up for me to give actual story to that. I still have almost no idea about what's going on with the character, even after completing his arcade mode, which I think should have been a lot better. What I think would have been a better mode for this actual particular mode is if alongside of the World Tour mode, we had a small cinematic story that was based on the core roster of characters. So not only can we get to know them better, but we know why the situation is, and give us a reason to not like this new main bad guy, which, even though I'm only on Chapter 9 of the story, I still have no idea who this guy is. After playing for 20 hours, I don't know who the guy is. I haven't played his arcade mode yet, but depending on how they present him in the game, using some sort of psycho power or something. I don't know if he's related to Bison or whatever, but I just don't know who the guy is, like, really. Like, and that's kind of a bad build-up if we're going into this game. We have no opening cinema to give us any kind of context. The arcade mode is pretty bare bones, and we don't have any context for the characters based on that. And then World Tour, the sliver of lore that you actually get from talking and interacting with these characters is more of a, this is this character's personality, as opposed to this is this character's story, if that makes any sense. So if you're in here looking for lore, you're not really going to get much of that. I haven't discovered any like encyclopedia mode that gives you extra like lore notifications and tidbits like it does for like Soul Calibur 6, for example. So it's not like something hidden behind that. There's pretty much just what the story presents you with, and that's what we pretty much have to accept. Now, I know I sound like I'm ragging on it a lot, but I do really enjoy this game. I just kind of wish there was more there, especially for fighting game like fanatics, because I know all my single player friends who are like gonna jump all over this World Tour mode. Is gonna be the primary mode that they use, that and Battle Hub. But the actual game, the core game itself, seems really bare bones for $60. If you're not downloading like the other 2 modes because you're not interested, you don't want to play, which some people will say, well, that's your choice. You're pretty much only getting arcade and online and training. That's like all there is, and only with 18 characters. So I don't really know exactly how they're going to get around that. Like, we have cinematics in World Tour mode itself, which are pre-rendered, and they actually do look really good. My game is running in performance mode because obviously I'm not going to miss any frames when I'm trying to horribly pull off a move, but that's the one thing. Alright, before moving on to Battle Hub, I'm going to talk about the 2 new playstyles that accompany Classic Mode, and just give my thoughts on them so far. At first, I was against the idea of Modern Mode, but like they force you into using Modern Mode and World Tour Mode for the entirety of Chapter 1, so you're pretty much acclimated towards that, and then if you want to go back to Classic, it's a little bit of a jump back. They do give you the Classic Mode move sets and the easier way, I want to say. Now, it's not dynamic, where you're pretty much mashing buttons and doing combos, and it's really hard to telegraph what you're even going to do, so you pretty much have to close your eyes and win with dynamic, which I don't like. But modern, I've kind of warmed up to. It's more of a simplified version of the full thing. You are cut out of some moves because there is no directional inputs like you would for the quarter circle forward motion of the classic style, but there's still a lot of fun to be had here. If you're linking physical combos together into special moves, they're mapped with like back and triangle, and this is speaking from PlayStation's point of view, back and triangle, like down and triangle, forward and triangle, or up and triangle. There's also neutral and triangle, which don't map Shoryuken to neutral because it's really hard to pull that off if you're standing still. Like I had to map that to like forward triangle, but there's a lot of customization within the Master System to actually indicate what moves you're using and where you're actually going to place them. Even within the overworld moves, you can actually order them how you want them to do. So that's actually a really good thing too. There have been also a lot of bugs that I've seen. I can show you a screenshot here of when I was doing the subway mission. I was just getting T-posed by this guy. And I know this is based on like the character creation engine, but every time I fight somebody and I knock them out, there's this really weird clip that happens where I'm like standing on top of them kind of, and it's like very awkward and weird to see. Some of the clothes don't go together and there's a lot of clipping issues, but this is pretty common for any game that has like a character creation engine. And I still applaud Street Fighter for actually attempting this in the first place. I think it's a good first step forward, and hopefully enough people play the game so that we actually get this in the next iteration of the game, because I do think that the budget is worthy of being spent on this, even though I enjoy the fighting aspect as well. Now in Battle Hub, again, by itself, it seems pretty bare bones. It should have just been like an area within World Tour or something. Like maybe you go to a stadium and like then you just select online, and then people like show up in the different servers that you have selected. Something akin to that. But I do think this mode is pretty bare bones. You go in there with your avatar. There's one section where you can challenge people down in the center, and you literally can't even just walk up to somebody and challenge them. You have to stand in the center, select that you want to challenge, and then you're waiting for somebody who to challenge you. It's pretty weird, and it feels awkward, and sometimes you could be waiting for a minute if nobody wants to play with you. And then you're also not being able to choose who you're playing against and see their avatar level. So as you can see, for me losing badly against this guy that I still kept in the game, I was level 34 and he was like level 60 or something like that, which is almost double my level, so I almost had no chance of winning. I know you guys are going to say get good scrub, but I mean the damage counter of like how much damage somebody takes at that level as opposed to half that level is pretty laughable. Like I'd have to be like a pro player in order to like win that match, but I still emoted and had fun, and it was still a fun fight even though I got my ass kicked, but I do really enjoy that aspect of it. And then otherwise there's a few things that you can do in the Battle Hub, like go up to the arcades and sit on the other side of somebody else and play the actual game. Something I forgot to mention, by the way, is there are mini games in World Tour mode, like slashing beer bottles, destroying trucks, like doing side jobs and stuff like that. And then there's also arcades within there where you can play the entirety of the Final Fight game, which is pretty fun and always something good to do. You can even choose all three characters. I enjoyed that. There's a lot of fun to be had there. In Hub, there's also these areas where like you can select clothing and whatnot, and this goes to my next problem that I have with the game. So in Street Fighter V, as much as I didn't like the vanilla version of that game, when you got fight money, you can actually put that towards purchasing DLC or even characters. Like, for a fact, I grinded so hard that I was able to buy, I believe it was the Evil Ryu, without having to spend any real world money. And I thought that was a great option because like you have to put tons of time and grind the game just to get enough money, fight money, to get a character. But in this case, that doesn't seem to be the case. We have fighter coins, and we have these tickets, these drive tickets, and they're both pretty much only purchasable with like real world money. And the fighting coins, I heard there is a way to get them, but I'm not exactly still sure on how that is. I think it's only for events and prizes and like stuff like that, but I haven't been able to accumulate any after 20 hours in the game playing all three modes, so I'm not exactly sure how true that is. And some of the costumes and stuff are locked behind this as well. Now you can unlock those costumes in the World Tour mode, so it's not necessary to actually have to physically buy them. But for things such as like certain emotes or things of that nature, it's going to be really hard to get them if you just want to play and not have to go through the slog of playing World Tour mode. You're going to be paying a lot more than $60 in the end if you're buying these tickets. So I had a little bit of a problem with that. I wish there was a way to grind out some of that, just like in Street Fighter V, where we can actually attain these pieces without having to go through the hassle of playing through the single player mode if we so chose not to, because somebody who doesn't download that mode, how are they going to get that stuff for their characters in the actual modes? So I don't know, that's a little nitpick that I have with that, but overall Battle Hub is fun. I'm looking forward to events because it looks like there's an open space where like they're going to be able to do things for like maybe certain holidays or certain themed battle events, and there's like custom lobbies and extreme battles and a bunch of fun to be had in there, especially if you go in there with the homies. But beyond that, I'd still say it's a pretty bare bones-esque kind of Battle Hub. It's like par for the course of things we've seen in other games already, and it's kind of old hat at this point, but I don't really see any other way that they could have done it better, so I'm just nitpicking on that. Yeah, I mean, the last thing I want to talk about is the actual characters of the game. Like I said, there's 18 characters in the game. I enjoy most of them. Even the new characters have a kind of vivid feel, and if you've played World Tour mode, you get a little bit of a feel for who they are, and you combine that with the arcade mode endings and beginnings, and like you have a pretty solid character, especially when like your character in the hub is actually, not in the hub, I'm sorry, the World Tour is interacting with that person and getting specific dialogue. So there's a lot of fun to be had with these new characters. I'm having fun with a lot of them, even if some of them I don't know exactly who they are yet. But I mean, obviously I started still sticking with like Ken Masters. Ken and Juri are usually like my two mains when it comes to Street Fighter. And then I play Ryu when I don't want to get like yelled at, because he's pretty much like the nightmare or like the Akuma of the game. So like I don't really want to like just get called a Shoto kid every time I try to go online against some like 6-year-old who like just got this game for his allowance. But when it comes to the game overall, though I do have a lot of problems with it, there are a lot of pluses with this game. So while I'm not exactly still sure or sold on the fact that it's worth $60 yet, especially for everybody, the different people who are playing these games, between the split player of the single players and people playing with their friends, and then the people that are here for online ranked only, because those are the 3 different types of people that will be into all these 3 different modes that are split up. I'm happy that I bought it. I'm still going to put a ton more time into it. I'm having a blast. I do wish there were more trophies for World Tour mode. There's only like 6 trophies or something like that, and they're pretty few and far between. But the DLC, like being like a year out, well, not all the characters, but finalizing it like after a year when like Akuma finally releases, and them having like a different ultimate pass for like a regular season pass, and them using these drive tickets to like sell extra money for different passes. A lot of this microtransaction stuff is not like flying with me, and I defend microtransactions a lot, especially in like paid for games if they're like not intrusive on the player's experience. But in this way, it really seems like if you want to get the most out of this game, you have to pay money, and it's not going to hinder your progress. Most of it is cosmetic, or attaining certain characters, which will, when the DLC comes out, those characters do get stories and show up in the World Tour mode, so you can learn their moves for your character. So it will affect like Battle Hub, and it will affect World Tour, because when you're trying to go into a Battle Hub and play against somebody who's using like Akuma style moves, and you don't really have a good counter for that yet, then like it's GG's. Like that's just all it is. But if I'm going to give my overall rating system for the game, because this was a full review and this did go into really far, thank you so much, by the way, if you did stay here until the end. Please put Hadoken in the comment section down below so I know that you stayed here and you guys are the truest. My final rating for this game, for Street Fighter 6, is a 7 out of 10. I think it has room for improvement. I think the game is a solid, better than average game. I enjoy it a lot. I can see why it's the #1 consecutive played game on Steam right now, and is destroying games like Mortal Kombat 11 was at its peak. We're talking like 60,000 concurrent players as opposed to like 39,000 concurrent players for Mortal Kombat. So it's like destroying records when it comes to even just Steam concurrent players. So I get the hype. I'm hyped about the mode too. I'm looking forward to playing a ton of more time in this game, but I just don't want to sit here and chill and tell you guys I don't have problems when I do have problems. The game's a blast. The game's fun. I highly recommend it. I'm not exactly sure if I would give it like a huge seal of approval. There's especially on the horizon we get games like Tekken 8 coming out and stuff like that, but I love this game. I'm going to put tons of time into it once again, and I hope to see you on the battlefield. And with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to a close, and as I always say, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.